By now, you probably already know who MG Motors are. Some of you may have even researched their glorious history, their beautiful sports cars, but ever since this Brit brand went into Chinese ownership, they've tried different kinds of vehicles, different kinds of body styles. But the MG ZS compact crossover, that is considered to be the best effort so far. Interestingly, that's the car we have with us here today. So let's take a closer look at what this car is all about. The ZS badge began life in 2001 for MG as a sporty sedan, but today it is a compact crossover that is slightly larger than the Suzuki S-Cross. It is longer and wider than the Hyundai Creta, but a relatively low height makes it appear quite compact than what its on-paper dimensions suggest. It is certainly not as hefty as the Hector, but it will be more expensive than that car. Here's why. Somehow, the MG ZS reminds me of the SsangYong Tivoli, the car that spawned the Mahindra XUV300. This one, however, looks a lot more sophisticated, much smarter, much more harmonious in its design and much more balanced in its form as well. As compared to the MG Hector, it doesn't have that imposing stance, but I think it looks quite handsome. In fact, there is not much that is common with this and the MG Hector. The design elements are all different. It's a completely different design philosophy altogether. Even the grille has that diamond effect like you have on the Mercedes-Benz cars. The only thing that I think unites this car with the Hector is that badge, the MG badge on the grille. But interestingly, this one pops out, and underneath it reveals a charging slot because this is the MG ZS Electric or MG ZS EV. In China, this car is called the EZS, whereas in the other parts of the world, it is called the ZS EV, and India will use the latter. You won't see too much badging on this car yet because what we are driving is a prototype. Excited? Let me tell you more. The ZS EV has a single motor configuration, and that motor resides at the front. It gets its power from a battery pack that resides in the floor like most EVs. But this battery pack is a 45.5 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which means it is juicier than what the Kona Electric has to offer. The charging socket supports a Type 2 charging cable. Now pair that with a regular 3-point plug in the household and it will need about 12 hours for a full charge. Pair that with a fast charger, it takes about 7 hours. Pair that with a rapid charger that will be commercially available and you will need about 40 minutes to go to 80% charge. The grille, like the rest of the car, looks conventional, and that isn't a bad thing. Under the hood is a conventional radiator and gadgetry that looks like the components of an overclocked gaming computer. The boot space isn't affected by the motors and the batteries, and there's plenty of room for your weekend's worth of luggage. If I were to hide this badge on the steering wheel, it's easy to confuse this cabin with one of the Volkswagens. I kid you not. The switches, their layout, even the switches on the steering, the design of the steering, it's so Volkswagen. This little knob that you get for the sunroof, it's from the Tiguan. You get these round AC vents, the turbine-like vents, which are very similar to the ones that you get in the Audi A3. Even the door knobs, the switches around them, it's so Audi. In fact, SAIC does work with the Volkswagen Group in China, and that is the reason why some of these parts are common. That is why the parts bin is common and it makes its way into the MG ZS. Is it a bad thing? Well, I don't think so, because it immediately lifts the feel of this cabin, makes it feel quite premium, and that is what I like. In fact, if you like what you've got in the Hector, if you like what you've seen in the Hector, this one is easily a couple of notches above. This knurled finish, this metallic switches, all of that looks nice. All the common touch points, even the top of the dashboard, it is done up in soft touch materials. You also have this lovely stitching, all of which, like I said, looks premium, and I like that. Even the space management, very nicely done. You get a center armrest under which is some storage area. You get 2 cup holders in here, and you have a double-decker arrangement for the tunnel console. So on top, you have enough space to keep a big phone. On the bottom, you have again some space for a big phone. You get a USB port. You also get a 12-volt socket. And they have nicely made this little crevice in here to route your cables through. But with a big phone, these cables won't work, because if you put the cable there, you can't keep your phone there, and then you have to resort to using the cup holders. But the overall layout is very nice. It's very refreshing. It looks quite nice, even though it has some commonalities with Volkswagen cabins. I even like the design of the instrumentation. It's quite simple, but I really hoped and wished that they could do something similar with the MG Hector as well. Both the analog clocks, very easy to read. Yeah, they've been a little lazy here because the speedometer is both MPH and kmph, but it's still very easy to read, very nicely laid out. The multi-info display, full color display, very crisp, very smooth with its graphics. It's easy to read again. It's got a wealth of information. So overall, I like the layout. I like how everything has been put together. It's really a nice feeling cabin in here. The infotainment doesn't get the iSmart connected technologies like the Hector yet, but we hope that MG is able to integrate it by the time this car hits the Indian showrooms, as connected technology has become synonymous with this brand. Even though there are batteries in the floor, there's a decent ground clearance, and the floor itself isn't too high. So getting in and out is just as easy as you would expect in a compact crossover. So how's the space at the back? Not all that bad really. Simran is in the driver's seat. He set the driver's seat to his driving preference. He's about 6 feet tall, and that still leaves me with a decent amount of knee room. I can nicely stretch out my legs if I want to. Under thigh support is also quite good. It does feel quite roomy in here. One of the reasons is the panoramic sunroof as well. That really adds quite a bit of roominess to this cabin, makes it feel nice and airy despite all the dark upholstery that has been used in the cabin. No center armrest. That's a bit of a grudge. I really hope they can integrate one by the time this car comes out. I do get a small storage cavity for my cell phone. There is a USB port here as well. Little difficult to access, but very nicely flush mounted. Yeah, so overall space, layout, quite nice. The seats, very nicely contoured. Long distance comfort shouldn't be a problem at all. The car feels sprightly, it feels eager, no matter where you're driving it. City speeds, highway speeds, around the twisties like I am right now, it just feels eager. And this is eco mode that I'm talking about, which is usually supposed to dull things down, just maximize economy. It does all of that. It does extend the range and all those things, but it still feels quite eager. Put it in sport mode and that eagerness is taken to a different level altogether. The car just wants to lunge forward, even roll on acceleration. No problem at all. 4 people in the car, at highway speeds, you want to pull quick overtakes, it will do that. Instantaneous power, instantaneous torque, and that is what I like about electric vehicles. All you Formula 1 fans are also going to like this little knob that you have in the center of the center console. It's called KERS, Kinetic Energy Recovery System. So this is regenerative braking essentially, and we had it in the Kona as well. You get it on the EZS as well. So what it essentially does is gives you 3 levels of deceleration forces when you take your foot off the accelerator pedal. It's just as sharp as what you had in the Kona. So level 1 is very much like a regular car, like the engine braking that you have in a regular car. It feels very much like that, feels very natural. Level 2 is slightly more intrusive. Level 3 is slightly more violent than that. Go off the pedal and it essentially immediately wants to come to a halt. So it is a little sharper, but I think I like it, especially around twisties. It really comes in handy when you are really going for it. Now what doesn't feel a lot like an electric vehicle is the silence of the cabin. Electric vehicles are supposed to be super silent. This one feels like that when you're driving at city speeds, but at highway speeds, you have a fair amount of wind noise cropping over the wing mirrors and also around the A-pillar. You get quite a lot of that inside the cabin. You also get a fair amount of road noise from these low resistance tires. So all of that does fill into the cabin. And then the air conditioning. The air conditioning to me is a little on the weaker side. I hope they fix it by the time the India spec vehicle comes out. Now this one has been assembled in India but not tuned to the Indian specifications, and I believe that they will work on the air conditioning as well. This one is a little soft for my liking, but why I'm bringing that up right now is I have to keep the blower speeds on slightly higher levels to be able to cool down the cabin to my liking in this particular humid and hot weather that we have in Gujarat right now. So with that kind of blower sound, the cabin silence is completely broken. It becomes quite a noisy cabin. But I think they will address all these things, and once they do, this should be hopefully as silent as you would expect an EV's cabin to be. Moving on to the ride and handling, that's another area where it again feels a bit German, a bit European. The ride has a bit of a firm edge. You probably heard that right now. It does thud and crash through some of the sharper stuff, the harsher stuff. I'm sure that MG is working on that, and they might just soften the setup a bit for the Indian conditions. But the flip side to that is around the bends, around the twisties, it has the handling dynamics that go with the kind of go that this electric powertrain has. It complements that pretty well. The turn-ins are sharp. The car doesn't feel too squishy. The car has nice taut dynamics through the bends. Even through fast switchbacks, it turns directions, changes directions very nicely. And like I said, it does go well with the eager dynamics or the eager package that this powertrain has to offer. And overall, I think it's a fun vehicle to drive. I just hope they are able to achieve this kind of a balance when they decide on the India specifications, and I hope that they do not go down to small wheel sizes to maximize range and to get better emissions and all of that, because this one certainly deserves to come here the way it is. It is a fun package. Now the good news is the MG ZS EV is coming to India this December. The better news is I'm driving this car in India, right here in India. So whatever I've shown you, whatever I've talked about, whatever I'm excited about is practically the package that you will be able to buy in India as early as 2020. Now that launch period could get delayed considering the kind of long waiting periods that the MG Hector has. So MG has a lot on their hands right now with the Hector, and that could delay the launch a bit, but we are told that the bookings will open soon, irrespective of where the Hector is. If that happens, I recommend that if you're excited about this product, if you are willing to shop in the electric space right now, then you get onto that booking list as soon as possible. Elsewhere around the globe, wherever this car is launched, it has run into long waiting periods. I'm sure that the response in India will not be as overwhelming, but I still expect it to be quite good because people are now warming up to the idea of electric vehicles, while there are many others still pondering about infrastructure, lack of it, and whatnot, and charging costs and all of that. You see, the Hyundai Kona Electric in a way started that electric revolution for India. It's gotten people thinking, and I think that this car will fuel that revolution further. And if MG were to deliver on the range and the pricing promise that they're hinting at right now, well, I think they will be on their way of setting yet another benchmark in India.